It's time to roll the credits with Chris and Wayne. Good evening, everyone. I'm Wayne Pyle, and this is Roll the Credits with Chris and Wayne. We're grateful to be here once again to bring you another entertaining interview with an amazingly talented person who works in film and television.
And I'm Chris Ty, and Roll the Credits with Chris and Wayne is the official video podcast of the Hunter Mountain Film Festival, which is online again this year from October 22nd through the 24th. For more information, please visit huntermountainfilmfestival.com.
So, Chris, we have another special guest tonight that I know from the before times, as we started calling them.
Yes.
She and I were both apprentices at the Actors Theater of Louisville back in the late 80s.
Wow.
So there were no cell phones, no widespread internet, no Uber, no Amazon, no Airbnb, just big hair, primary colors, and awesome music. And I went to Actors Theater to study with Bob Krakauer, who is now a pretty well-known acting coach. Yeah. But at the time, he was just getting started as a director back then. And it was such a great time because we were, as part of the acting program, we were doing acting classes in the morning, building sets all afternoon, acting and running the shows at night, and just doing that over and over again. And it was a total immersion in theater making that I'm really super grateful for. And that was all going on in the late 80s. So how about you, Chris? Where were you and what were you doing back in the 80s?
Well, geez, I wish I could say I was doing deep immersion study with Bob Krakauer. I was more deep immersion study at Disney World. Yes, I was a Mouseketeer, sort of. Yes, as part of a college.
Tell us more.
It was a thing. They had this college program. We were the very first. We were their experiment.
Oh, wow.
And I was so interested in it, and because I loved all things Disney at the time, and I just figured my odds were good because it was me and 10 girls from my college. And then, there was like,
wow,
why not? There was a total of like 200. And but the thing is, a lot of people don't know this, that they actually have what they call Disney University, which is actually, so we're told, technically an accredited university. So not only was I working, but I had to go to class every week and get immersed in their way of thinking or indoctrinated.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I actually loved it. But the thing is, I was working in the parking operations as a guy who spieled on the back of the tram. That was my first foray into acting. Wow. It was more like stand-up comedy because
right.
I was given this really boring script, and it couldn't have been more dull. And I just decided to, put my own color to it. So, you're driving people back to the parking lot, and I'd say, okay, Chippendale Minnie, Pluto, Goofy, Daisy, Donald, Sleepy, Dopey, Happy, and Grumpy, and I would just say, okay, all the goofy people off on the left.
Right. So trying to spice things up a little
bit. All the grumpy
right?
people off on the right. Yeah, that sort of thing. But it wasn't until later that, and I went to work in the corporate world as a supervisor. And I say that way because I work for Campbell's Soup.
Oh, wow.
And yes, and that was in California. Then I came home, and then I was just still had that bug in me, and I started studying acting, and here I am. I should say, yada, 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 here I am.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us, your 80s life. I whenever you tell this story, because you've told me this before, actually, I do picture you like standing there in your little Disney suit, doing your thing.
That's right. Short hair, clean cut, all that.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, our special guest tonight has her MFA in drama from Yale and her BA from Tufts. She's a multi-hyphenate producer, which we're about to find out more about that, who has worked on numerous films and documentaries for television. She's worked on feature films like Donnie Brasco, You Can Count on Me.
And her most recent documentary projects include American Divided, the Emmy-nominated Showtime series The Fourth Estate, The Family Business, Trump and Taxes, Street Gang, How We Got to Sesame Street, and Through Our Eyes, currently screening on HBO Max, Wayne.
Wow, great stuff. I can't wait to talk to her. We are very pleased to welcome Lisa Diamond to Roll the Credits with Chris and Wayne. Lisa, we are so glad you're here. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Chris and Wayne. How are you?
We're doing well, thanks. Thanks for joining us tonight. So let's get right into it, Lisa. I know you're super
All
busy,
right.
so we have a bunch of
Super
questions
busy.
to ask you about all of this exciting stuff that you've been working on. As I was telling Chris, you heard us there. You and I go way back 30 something years to Actors Theater of Louisville, and I wanted to ask you this. I didn't send this along as a previous question, but do you have any funny memories from that time?
Oh my
Like
gosh.
it's something you can share with us.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
for the
that's
audience.
safe for work. Yeah.
Well, I mean, one thing I'll mention. So, it was a wonderful, wonderful theater apprentice program. I was there right out of college, as were, a lot of people were there right out of college or a year or two out of college. So, but I will point out, I was not there as an actor. I was a literary intern. So I spent my days in the literary manager's office reading scripts.
Michael Dixon, right? Is that who that was?
Dixon
Yeah, Michael Dixon
was the literary manager then at the Actors Theater of Louisville. And Louisville had a famous, well, they still have a play festival called the Humana Festival. And so they were open to submission. So hundreds of plays came in. So I sat there reading plays. So the fun times for me were getting to hang out with you acting apprentices because you were the funny people and you were where the fun was. So
we tried.
One day I remember, do you remember the Wall of Fire?
Yes, the Cremora Wall of Fire.
Yeah, so that was amazing. So party at the set shop, the scene shop, and all the scenics there, and this big famous thing is someone gets up on a big tall ladder and pours a whole can of Cremora and lights a flame, and the whole thing goes up in flames. And you'll never use
Cremora, like we put in the coffee.
Coffee mate. You'll
coffee
never
mate or Cremora. Yeah, they called
it
it the Cremora Wall of Fire, and they also put copper sulfate in it, so it also had like green sparks coming up. So they stood on this like 20-foot ladder and dropped this thing, and it was like poof. I remember feeling like my eyebrows had gotten singed, but it was like our initiation kind of into the shop. So that was really cool. Oh, that's a great memory. Thanks for bringing that one up. I had actually forgotten about that. And they would also play the song "Walk Like an Egyptian," but they would say "Walk like a technician," and they'd carry all their keys and shake them, as they would come in through the shop. That was fun, awesome stuff. So let me ask you this: was there a lesson that you learned, like from Michael or somebody else in your department that you were working in, that you still use today?
That's a good question.
Because I still use the stuff I learned from Bob. Like it's still like ingrained in my mind.
Michael, I will say Michael Dixon, I thought was a really, really good literary manager and dramaturg. He had such good, precise insights. I suppose for me, because I went on to study dramaturgy for my master's at Yale. So it was and I would say that was really the start of that interest for me into really understanding how plays are written, and later by extension screenplays, and understanding how characters are developed. And so I mean, I don't know that I have a nugget of wisdom from then, but it was just about like I really got into I love reading scripts. I still love reading scripts.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I just was wondering if it had the same impact on you, because it really did have a really strong impact, and I think that's why we still stay in touch and want to get together on Zoom and things like that, because it was so influential.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was an intense year.
It was.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about Louisville, but yes.
No, I know, but I just I wanted to catch up, from that time, so people kind of understand the context of everything.
Well, I wanted to go fast forward a little bit in time. So you were at this great theater apprenticeship program in Louisville. Then after you finished there, you got into Yale's drama program, right?
Yeah, I had a couple years in between. So after Louisville, I moved to New York, and I was in New York for 2 years before I went to grad school. And those were actually, it's so funny because I think of those 2 years as like, I just like throw off things. I did whatever job came up, but they were actually quite fundamental. My first job, I worked for a literary agent first for a year. So I was his assistant, answering phones and taking messages and everything. But again, reading scripts, and so he happened to represent Aaron Sorkin at the time when A Few Good Men had just been on Broadway. So it was like the start of it, but you didn't know at the time. And he represented like really terrific playwrights and screenwriters. So again, not knowing it, I just fell into it. So I'd read these scripts and I got to know these writers, and it was a really great education. I also did, and then I ended up, again, just like I fell into jobs. And so, I know one of your questions about like giving advice, whatever.
Right.
My advice for young people is always just like, take whatever job sounds interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. Going to lead to something. So another job is I worked for the Comedy Channel when it was like brand spanking new.
Yeah.
It was the first year of it. It was just launching. And again, unbeknownst, nobody, we were all young and starting out. One of the writers on this, I was an assistant. I was a script PA. I Xerox scripts and brought changes around to people. Jon Stewart was one of the writers on the show I was on, but he wasn't Jon Stewart yet.
Right. Yeah. That's cool.
He was trying to build his career and get somewhere. So it was an amazing time. And so that was 2 years. And then I did Yale, because at that time I still thought, I still want to do dramaturgy. I want to do literary management. I want to do play development. And it wasn't until basically when I was at Yale and then finishing, probably because of those experiences I'd had those couple years in New York, I really felt the pull to that world of film and television.
Interesting.
Kind of became stronger than the pull to theater. It's hard to explain, and you have to talk to my therapist, but
right. So you were at Yale for dramaturgy, though, is that correct?
I was at Yale for dramaturgy.
Now I know this is a silly question, but did you happen to run into Annie Davison at all during that time?
No, I don't know. Annie.
Oh, okay. She might be late. I think
she was there later.
I think she was there later. Yeah.
Yeah. I was there 90 to 93.
Okay. So. Yeah. I think she came in 94, 95, somewhere around there. Yeah. Because when we were in grad school at Delaware. But anyway, so from dramaturgy to film and TV, was there like a project, or was somebody like, hey, I need you to help me produce this, or what happened? Like,
no,
how did you fall into, documentary producing?
Yeah, I knew nothing really. Like I came out of, grad school for theater. I had like a couple of contacts again from those earlier jobs, but now those had been years earlier at that point. So, and I really knew nothing about film production. I mean, zero.
Right.
So I came, but I was just like, I knew I wanted to do, so again, this is where my life took a left turn and eventually circled back around, but it took a while. But so I wanted to still work with scripts. I still wanted to work with writers. I wanted to do development, so I wanted to do like screenplay film development. And that's a whole area. And everybody kept saying, well, that really all happens out in LA. You have to go to LA. And I kind of didn't want to go to LA. I like New York.
Right.
So I found jobs in production, and somebody also gave me advice. And they're like, there's two strands. There's production and there's development. And if you go to production, you'll never get a job in development because people will only see you as this one thing. And I was like, oh, come on, that's not right. You can do whatever you want. Come on, that's all right. So I start working in production, lo and behold, a year or so in. Again, like the whole thing with this business is one job leads to a next in production. And so, next thing I know, all about production, and development is long gone.
Right.
And, so I was building skills. So I was working in scripted films. So first, for a couple of years, I was people's assistants. Again, that's what you do. That's how you mentioned Donnie Brasco. That was one of my favorite wonderful film experiences, because I was the assistant to the director, Mike Newell.
Wow.
Who couldn't have been a nicer guy, nicest guy. And so that was a wonderful education. Again, all of those movies that I did when I worked on big movies, such a great education for how the whole thing works. And what I found was, so I had come out like with this, I always thought of myself as a literary minded person, right? Into the structure and the of writing, of scripts. But I found out that I also had a very pragmatic, logistical mind, which I didn't know that. And so the nuts and bolts of production actually were something, and the whole idea of problem solving, and really ultimately as a producer, your job title should just be, problem solver. Like that's what you do. That's what you do all day long.
Well, this leads into Chris's next question. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, sure does.
It's complicated and we want to know more about this. So go ahead, Chris.
Because I was looking on your IMDb page and I noticed that you're many different titles as a producer. I mean, look, you've been a producer, a line producer, a co-producer, post-producer, a supervising producer, head of production, a production manager, production accountant, production coordinator, and production executive. So we're really curious how different.
Yeah, what's the difference? Yeah, how do we tell which job? Yeah.
There's no difference whatsoever. No, I'm just. Oh my gosh. So there's another thing I learned. So the different areas of media and entertainment, films, television series, documentaries, tend to use the same titles in different ways.
I see.
So, for instance, an executive producer on a television series, many times the writers of series get executive producer credit as well.
Okay.
So I didn't know that. But on a film, the executive producer is not the writer. They're often the funder or the network or the studio or someone who, caused the project to exist, but didn't necessarily do the hands-on day-to-day stuff.
Right.
So an executive producer is a completely different thing in film and television. So likewise, what else is in there? I don't know. So sometimes.
So what's for people who don't know, what's a line producer?
Okay, a line producer. That is a good one, because I had a friend of mine once who I'd known for years, and at some point when he found out what a line producer actually was, he was like, "Oh, I thought you were like you ran lines with the cast or something." I was like, "Oh my God, no." So
that's not it. Yeah.
The word line relates to the budget. So lines in the budget. So by being the line producer, you are the person in charge of the budget. Usually you make the budget and you then try to make everybody stay on budget.
Right.
And so you're concerned with each budget line, that you are balancing it all the time. And so you're constantly going over in one area and then you cover that somewhere else, like your cars cost more than you thought, or gas was really expensive that year, so your gas line is higher, but then you're like, well, we didn't shoot as many days, so I have some savings in my camera rental, so I'll use that to cover the thing over here, blah blah blah. So that's what line producers do. They also do a lot more. They also are usually concerned with just the whole structural, the management
makeup
of all the different departments. I mean, especially on a scripted film, there's so many departments, and the line producer is just making sure that basically you're just trying to make everything run smoothly and make sure each department has what it needs to get their job done. So,
Gotcha.
So when you first got into production, what was your first job as a producer like for you, and was it what you expected?
So when I first got into producing, and I was a line producer first for a few years on low budget indie films. So that the heyday of that was in the 90s into the early 2000s. And that's exactly when I was, bursting on the scene here in New York.
Right.
So I was really, really lucky. There were so many indie companies. There was the Shooting Gallery, and there was Good Machine, and a couple that are still around. A lot of those people are still around producing things, but you were able to, kind of support yourself on these low budget films that might be made for under $1 million. And so those were the films I was line producing, were films that no one's ever heard of. I don't think any of them ever came out and got released, but they, you're trying to shoot an entire film in 23 days on a budget of $12.53. And you have no money for anything. And you have, you know, everyone telling you, but I need more lights, I need this, I need this. Anyway, it's a super hard job.
I'm sure.
So in terms of you're saying, was I surprised about what was involved? I guess not really, because having been around it on the bigger movies, even though I wasn't in charge of that, like I saw what those people did.
Right.
The difference was doing it on a small movie is you have far fewer people to do the same amount of work. And that's the big thing you learn. Like, doesn't matter if you're shooting, you know, Donnie Brasco or this tiny little movie, you still have to like load the trucks, put out call sheets, have everyone show up to the same place at the same time on the same day and make something happen. And it's really, really hard when you have much fewer people to do it.
My goodness. Wow. So is there can you relate like, I love asking people this because we get some great stories out of it. Is there like a time when things just like went off the rails that you remember, where it was just like really funny or terrifying, but funny later when you look back at it, something like that you can share with us?
So one of my favorite stories, I don't want to name the film, but one of these low budget things.
Names have been changed to protect
was actually so ridiculous, and the script was not very good. But you know, what I always enjoyed out of it is, and why I kept doing it, is like it's all about the crews and you all bond and it's very intense and you're just having this great. But there was this story about a lawyer who rescues his druggy girlfriend from a mob boss, and he's going to save the day and all this stuff. And the climax of the film is that he and the girlfriend run away from the mob, and they run off, and they're hiding out in a house in Maine. Which we shot in New Jersey.
Right.
So just found this big house. Anyway, they're hiding out in the house in Maine, and they're like, well, how, you know, they want to make sure they're going to know, like, if somebody's creeping up on the lawn to get them.
Right.
So what they do is they're going to strew swordfish bones. Why? I don't know. They're going to strew swordfish bones all over the lawn, and they're going to paint them with day glow in the dark paint.
Right.
And so that they could see them. And then if they hear someone crunch them, then they'll know someone's coming. Okay. This was what was in the script. So we're like, wow. Okay, we need 100 swordfish bones.
How do we source that? Yeah. Where do you go for that?
Someone came up with, I don't know, our production designer was amazing. And so like came up with a mold, and then we were going to get all these plaster molds made of swordfish heads. Somehow, you know, we made 20 of them look like 100, everything. But like, to me, it was like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Like, why?
I love these stories. Yeah, I love these kind of stories. I don't know. Have you ever heard Matt Greenberg talk about the time he wrote this script and there was supposed to be these characters that were vampires, and he was trying to get them to distinguish them on set, you know, what they were supposed to look like. And they were supposed to have like white contacts or something, but they couldn't afford the white. My producer was like, no white contacts. So he shows up on set, and all of it, the vampires just had blue eyes. For some reason, they couldn't get the white contacts, but they were able to get blue contacts. And he was like, there was no, it just looked like people with blue eyes. It didn't look like anything
scary about that at all.
Yeah. So it's a similar kind of thing where they're like, we don't know how to do this, so we'll just do this other thing instead. God. And it's like, I always say, it's like a miracle that any of these things ever get made anyway. So the solutions.
I want to tell you, I just this afternoon walked past a film set of people, and I can always tell the size. I can pinpoint the size of the budget by like how many trucks and how many people are there. And I'm still drawn. Like, we'll get into it. I work in documentary now, and I never want to make a feature film, not documentary again, because it's so ridiculously hard. I'm still amazed by it. And I've always been amazed. Like I said, like all this stuff showed up at this corner on this day to shoot 12 seconds of a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
At 5 a.m. I find that incredible. I find the logistics of it just incredible. Yeah,
it really is. Yeah, it really is amazing how people just go above and beyond and keep coming back doing it.
Crazy what goes into it. Yeah,
it really is.
I was curious, what kind of documentary stories are you most impacted by, and why?
So I don't even know how I ended up ending up in documentary, but Probably just it's where the work was after a while. I think that's just the industry. Sure. I'm trying to think back, like the industry moved on from the indie film places and the studios bought them all up, and so focus features became part of something bigger and all that. So there wasn't as much work in that, and at the same time, like that whole reality TV nonfiction was growing. So somewhere in the 2000s, I kind of just moved over into non-scripted. And what I really, really like, I don't know, what am I impacted by? It's hard to pin down one thing. I mean, as with other kinds of storytelling, like documentary is still storytelling. It's just you go about it in a different way to put that on screen. You don't write a script. You have an idea of a story you want to tell, and you go find it, and you talk to people, or you follow people, you interview people, you get a lot of archive, and then you spend months and months and months in an edit trying to put it together into a way that will tell a story and have an emotional impact. So, I like things that just unfold as a really good story, and that have some surprises and have great characters, and tell you something you didn't know before. I think that's the thing I love. Sure. Documentary. They wow me. I'm just like, because they're real. And I'm like, wow, like people are doing that. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think that's why I like them too, certain ones, because it's like you get insight into a world that maybe you wouldn't have access to any other way, except by watching, what the filmmakers have composed, basically. I think it feels more like, composing the movie by gathering the materials first, and then where is the story within these pieces. And have you ever noticed that it changes from the original intention to what the final product is? Yeah.
Every time you definitely go into it, with an idea of what story you're going to tell, but then there's always things that shift, and because of the material you find, because of what someone says in an interview, because of connections you make as you go along. And that's what's fun and exciting about it. And I was talking about like it coming full circle because for me, I think what I also love with documentaries is it's really made in the edit. Yeah. And so it's very dramaturgical. It's very
right. That's the connection
the building
there. Right.
blocks and the what little thing is going to convey this person's character. What little what moment is really going to have an effect on the audience when they're watching it, and like these are the things you're looking for. And so it's like all of those skills. It was crazy, right? Because like it really hit me. It was like, oh my God, I'm using my dramaturgy brain again. And I hadn't used it for a long time when I was doing all the logistics, and now I'm using it again. And I really
Wayne and I were on a film together a few years back, and it seemed like it was all go all the time. We were always scrambling, always busy. I was helping producers, and I was working probably 16-hour days, and it was more. I was just all this is coming to mind as you were talking, and I'm thinking, I wonder what it would be like to compare that experience to a documentary, which I have not worked on. And I have to imagine that it's much calmer and a little bit maybe more serene. And I don't know, is that a fair description?
Well, yes and no. Certainly documentary still has its moments when you're putting a shoot together. There can be a lot of last minute scramble. I'm working on something now, and I just had a crew go to Canada for a week, and we thought we were all buttoned up with the paperwork for them to go to Canada, and they literally got to the border, and the guy's like, no, you don't have the right paper. And then man. Like there was but luckily it was a very nice border guard. And he's like, I need to see this. And so we manufactured that thing and got it up there via text messages. And, but that was, those moments happen.
Those border things. Yeah, they can be tricky.
And so there can still be all those things go wrong, and with locations and with equipment and whatever. But and then also you're often up against an air date clock.
Right.
The one thing I learned is documentaries take a long time. Some documentaries take a long time. They don't all take a long time, but especially archival ones can take a really long time. But at some point you have to finish, and it has to be aired. And then like the archival licensing and all the finishing and all these things you have to do at the end can be like more intense.
So by that you mean, for people who aren't sure, archival, you mean that you have to get some footage from historical places and get the rights to it. And have
if you're using news footage, if you're using anything you don't film yourself is considered archive. That's in the lingo, right?
Right.
If we didn't film it and therefore we own it, we being the production company making this film. If we are getting it from somewhere else, it's called archive.
I see. Okay, good. That's clear. Yep. That's very clear. So let's say, I know you've already kind of answered this. You said, do as many things as you can, which I totally agree with. But let's say a young person comes up to me and said, Wayne, what I really want to do is I want to produce documentaries. What advice would I give that person to get started? If they just suddenly, they woke up one morning, they're like, I want to make stories about real people doing real cool stuff. What would you say to them?
I'd say do it. So a couple things. One thing is nowadays it feels like, everyone's been saying this, you can pick up an iPhone and go shoot something, because you can shoot in 4K on an iPhone. You can, there's edit software, there's, you store all your footage in the cloud. Like you can very economically find a story and go make something yourself, and people are doing that all the time, right? But if you beyond that, if you want to get paid to do it, instead of just going to do it yourself, I would suggest, first of all, watch all documentaries you can. There's so many now everywhere, HBO, Netflix, and Apple, and everywhere, right? So that you can see styles that you like, and different, because there are so many different kinds of ways you can tell a story. And so just get versed in that language of how storytelling is done. There's a style called verite, which you don't know, which just means literally following people around with a camera in their everyday life, not
like Maisel's
not sitting them down for an interview, right? And that was really like the breakthrough, sort of the birth of documentary filmmaking, where it went beyond newsreel footage.
Right.
Beyond news footage was those early days of Maisels and Penny Baker, and because anyway, there's a whole long history of that, but basically the ability to sync sound is what made that possible. Because before they couldn't, you could film something, but the sound would separate anyway. They didn't have sound, and also the equipment was so huge. And all this. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I lost my train of thought.
We were just talking. No, I thought you were on a great train there. You were just saying, like, you want to watch as many as possible to get the different styles, and you started talking about verite, and then you were going to go on to
right. That was it. So I was just saying what verite was. Right. So verite is any kind of like just following people around in their day-to-day life, not planned. And so that's, one type of filmmaking. And then I'm sure a lot of people see like the talking heads interviews where, like someone is sitting down and talking, and just talking to the interviewer, to the camera, and providing a lot of the background and information and personal experience that they experience. So anyway, just getting into that. And then it's pretty easy, I think, nowadays to just find the names of companies, find people online, and go. I don't know whether it still works this way or not, but 30 years ago when I got started, I literally just knocked on doors at
Why
production
not?
company
Right? Yeah,
say,
why not still do that?
you know, I want to be a PA. And
Yeah.
so you just find contact information and start sending things out to people, and you will get a PA job.
Nice.
No doubt.
Well, I would say over the last few years, we've had a lot of amazing documentaries at the Hunter Mountain Film Festival.
We have.
And I've noticed, because you're talking about the different styles, now that you're bringing it up, I think of the different styles that I've watched. There's some that have been shot in that manner, verite, and there's been some, there was no dialogue, and the impact was the scenery and the emotion, and it just, there's just so many amazing documentaries. Any film festival, I think people submit a lot, and it's really good resource to watch. So, and it's some original, no, I don't want to say homemade, but not professionally produced, but really nicely produced.
Well, and I think with internet now too, people are even making like little shorts, on their phones of documentary style.
Again, like there's not really money in those,
right?
But there can be exposure. There's like, again, the same way there's so much content out there. There's a zillion film festivals, and a lot of them do shorts. A lot of them do documentaries. There's in fact an entire very well-known shorts festival called Indie Shorts. It's part of the Heartland Film Festival, and then they sort of have an offshoot that's just for shorts called Indie Shorts, and they have a documentary section, and so you can get those out there. Like it's hard to, oh my God, I love watching them. I really do love watching them, but you can't watch, there's not enough time in the
it goes on forever. But well, switching gears a little bit. Now, you produced 4 episodes of Through Our Eyes for HBO Max. Can you share that process that you took from, to go from the original idea to getting the show on HBO?
Sure. Although I was, so that's an interesting one, because it was produced by Sesame Workshop, the people who bring you Sesame Street. They decided, given the zeitgeist and seeing like the market for documentary out there, the appetite for documentary, and there was a foresightful creative head there who's thought, we should maybe get into this documentary space. And so I was not part of the initial idea development. I was hired by Sesame Workshop to come on once they'd already had the idea of what it was they were going to do. And that idea was to do 4 episodes, each one about a half-hour short documentary, each one on a different topic of something that affects families and children. And they're really, really challenging topics. The 4 topics they ended up with were homelessness, parental incarceration, climate change displacement, and having military, military caregiving. So having a wounded veteran parent, and the whole idea of it was that it was all going to be through the lens of a child. So in each of those circumstances, each episode would have 2 or 3 different families, different children, from different geographic areas. And it's done mostly as verite, but also with interviews with the children, with the parents, cut together for that. And the brilliant idea was also to go out to 4 different, really established top documentary filmmakers for each of the 4 episodes. So what I was brought on for as a producer was to like be the glue between the 4 different directors who each with their 4 different companies are going to make our 4 different episodes, and having consistency as a series for Sesame Workshop and HBO Max, who were, airing it. So there was a lot I did. Again, it was a combination of the logistics and the creative, because I did a lot of the contract work, the paperwork, working with the lawyers, like, do we have the right releases? Is everyone using the same releases? Just a lot of little things. And then, but then also as each filmmaker did their casting, like we were reviewing that, and so what I want to say is like, I did not, I gotta say, sort of like literally go out and make those 4 films. The 4 directors and their teams did, but I was, I guess, the gatekeeper then through to Sesame of like processing everything that they came in with and getting approvals and notes and all of those things on each of those things. So it was really amazing because it was like, making 4 little films at the same time. So again, there was a lot to do and a lot to keep track of, but it was really fascinating and interesting. And I encourage people to go watch it. It's on HBO Max. It's really beautiful because these kids in all of these stories and all these families are amazing.
I caught a little bit of it today, and it's definitely worth checking out. It's really moving and very powerful. It's beautiful stuff. Well done.
And has the pandemic affected? Well, of course, it's affected your work, but I mean, how has it affected your work as a producer?
Hugely. So Through Our Eyes was entirely produced during the pandemic. And so along with all the, it had just gotten started just before the pandemic. So, the plan was that these people, they were going to fly everywhere and, shoot these things. And then we're in pandemic. And so we recalibrated, as everybody did, came up with COVID safety plans that involve a lot of testing and a lot of PPE and a lot of some amount of remote shooting too. So for some of the shoots, the director didn't go on the shoot, and they hired like a local crew in that place. Because again, we still wanted geographic diversity for this. We didn't want it to, our directors were based in LA and New York, but we didn't want the stories to only be in LA and New York. So if it was in driving distance, maybe the director and cinematographers would go. But if they were out in, like, we have a story in Iowa and in Texas, and they just did it by sending a crew and being connected by an iPad or a phone to the shoot to see what's going on. And that's how a lot of that's how a lot of documentaries were made during the pandemic.
I'm just like overwhelmed thinking about the coordinating of all that. I just smashed my microphone because of it. Oh my goodness. I can't believe that you did that all during what was going on.
The whole thing was during COVID. And so there was just, again, a lot of safety measures, a lot of testing.
Somebody has to do a study of how we as filmmakers handled the pandemic, because honestly, I think everybody did a great job.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, the way people came together and got the coordination, got the coordinators on set and figured out what to do to keep us working almost all the way through is just an incredible amount of brain power and talent and creativity.
And to be honest, and we're still doing it. Like, sure, vaccinations came in and that's great. So the teams I'm working with now, everyone on our team is vaccinated, but when they go on a shoot, they still have to go get negative COVID tests. They're vaccinated because there's breakthroughs, blah, blah, blah. So everyone has to get tested before they go on a shoot, have negative tests, wear masks, wear PPE, keep distance. Like we send minimal people, like really, the difference is they can get on a plane now and go somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
They gotten it down to a science.
Yeah, but and it costs a lot of extra money.
I was just going to ask you that as a line producer, how much of the budget is now being taken up by COVID protocols?
It added like 10 to 15% more onto the budget. And that's for a documentary. I know that for features, because their crews are so much bigger and all that, it could add like 20-25%.
20 to 25. That's what I'm hearing from people on the other side on feature. Because it's so much stuff to coordinate. Oh man, that is amazing. So here's a question for you. After having said all of those things, I love to ask this of very talented people like yourself, because I can't find the answer. So I'm looking for it from all of you out there. How do you find the balance between working and living and pandemic and creating new projects and finishing old ones? What's the secret, Lisa Diamond? Tell me.
I don't know. It's so funny when you first started saying like, I can't find the answer. I was gonna say, did you Google it? But
right, exactly. Well, I probably could.
I don't think you can Google this one.
What do
I
you
don't
do?
know.
What do you do to try to,
What
when
do
things
I
are
do?
so, because I mean, that is kind of like what you have a great skill at as a producer, is how do you
I mean,
balance
here
all of
I
your
am
things?
working in my bedroom, as I
Right,
said,
right.
like it's
Yeah.
not ideal. Like
Yeah.
I would much rather have I'd still again, it's like, yeah, I love not commuting, but
Right.
I also like having a separation and having a place to go and having
Yeah.
people to interact with and bounce
Human
ideas off
connection.
of.
Yeah.
What we're really missing working in a creative field is that serendipitous happenstance when you're like
Right.
just
Yes. When
hanging
you
out
just
with
run in.
someone.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, I mean, and that's where creativity happens. So it's
Yeah.
is really, really hard
That is
to
difficult.
not
Yeah.
have that. And everyone's made it work. Like, again, this business, and I would say this documentary was especially primed for this. Like, there were already editors who like to work remotely and
Right.
in their houses upstate. And you're
Right.
like, be like, yeah, I work remote. And now it's like, they all work remotely.
Right. Right.
And so you can be, I'm working for a production company right now in Portland, Oregon. I'm in New
Right.
York. There's
Wow.
an editor in LA. There's an editor in New York. It's just like everyone can be anywhere. It's not ideal though. Like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can make it work, but it's not great.
So do you have like a big secret producer book where you find all of your people, or did you just get from meeting them throughout the years, or how do you find the people, whenever you're stuck, like you said, in your bedroom at home working? What's the new way?
There's again, with the internet made it all possible. There are a lot of great resources, and actually, and I'll promote this too, I've learned a lot through the last couple of years with questions of diversity and equity. And I think the big thing in this business is it is infamously not diverse enough.
Yeah. Yes.
And I was, and again, a lot of it is because it's the word of mouth factor. So it's the people you went to school with, and it's this and that. And so like getting in that pipeline can seem prohibitive. I've learned of many resources for hiring people of color and looking beyond my immediate network to find people. So there's one called Brown Girls Doc Mafia, and they have 3,000 members, and they have a database and online and a website, and they, you can go look for people for whatever role you're trying to fill. That's one. There's several others, and so there's just a slew of staffing groups, resources, organizations that you can look for.
Great.
Well, Lisa, if people would like to find out more about you, where can they go to do that?
I don't know.
Is there a place on the internet we can find you and put up your? Yeah.
Well, you've already said no. I don't have a website.
No.
I'm a that's the other big thing. I'm a freelancer. I'm an independent producer. I don't have a company.
You have social media?
I go where the wind blows. Social media. Yes, I do have that.
Okay, great. How can we find you on there?
I don't even know what my Twitter handle is. I think I'm at LDiamond99.
I'll check it before I put it up. I'll check it.
Yeah. You want me to look it up right now?
Sure, if you want to. Yeah.
I'm going to. It's so funny because I don't. Yeah. Oh no, I'm not. I'm at Lisa Diamond 99.
Okay, great. We'll put that up.
I'm probably at LDiamond99 on Instagram.
Okay, great.
Everything I do is LDiamond99. Nice. So yes, that's where they can find me.
Great. And do you have any new projects that you've been working on that are coming up soon?
Not that I can discuss.
Yeah. Anything that you can discuss.
So I think I mentioned, so I'm working for a director who is based in Portland, Oregon, and has 4 feature projects going on right now at the same time. Wow. And I'm involved across them, again, more as a supervisor, one of my many titles, supervising producer. The two are for HBO. One is for ABC News Docs, but I don't know if they've been publicly announced yet.
Sure.
I don't think I can talk about them.
I gotcha. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. It's so great to see you. I'll see you on the next ATL Zoom call, I hope.
Yeah.
And also, we had that conversation before the last one. Let me know if you're up our way so we can grab some lunch or something.
Totally. Yeah. All right.
And
thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Lisa, for being here. And roll the credits with Chris and Wayne tonight. And for those of you watching at home, don't forget to check out all the other great content at huntermountainfilmfestival.com. We are online again this year from October 22nd through the 24th.
And make sure to check out Lisa Diamond's work on Through Our Eyes on HBO Max.
Yes.
And until next time, we'd like to thank you for being a part of our film and TV community. And please, folks, remember to stay safe, be well, and keep telling those stories. Chris, it's that time again.
It sure is, Wayne. It's time to
roll the credits. Bye, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.